Every American should feel safe becoming an organ donor and giving the gift of life. Yet decades of ignored patient safety concerns have driven more and more Americans off the donor list. Today, under President Trump's leadership, we are taking bold action and historic action to restore trust in the organ procurement process. For the first time in history, HHS will decertify an organ procurement organization mid-cycle. I make this announcement in consultation with Deputy Secretary Jim O'Neill, Administrator Oz, Administrator Engels, and leading experts across the department. We are acting because of years of documented patient safety data failures and repeated violations of federal requirements. And we intend this decision to serve as a clear warning. The Life Alliance Organ Recovery Agency, based in Miami, Florida, has a long record of deficiencies directly tied to patient harm. Staffing shortfalls alone may have caused, there was a 65% staffing shortage consistently across the years, and may have caused as many as 8 missed organ recoveries each week, roughly 1 life lost each day. Unlike the Biden administration, which ignored these problems and failed to act, the Trump administration is setting a new standard of patient safety comes first. Today's announcement leaves no doubt. When OPOs operate properly, they save lives. When they operate improperly, they are going to face decertification. I have a nephew, Michael Hines, who had a lifetime cerebral palsy. He died at the age of 20 in May, and we were able to donate his organs. His cornea gave 2 people the gift of sight. His kidneys went to separate people and saved lives. His heart went to a 9-year-old boy, and his liver went to a mother, a 40-year-old mother of a child with a disability. And she wrote us a moving letter talking about how frightened she was that she would not be able to survive and take care of her disabled son. She did not know that Michael was also disabled. This was not only a gift of life to 7 people in sight, 7 people, but it was a gift for our family as well, because it infused with meaning and purpose the life of Michael. He was able in his own death to save the lives of all these people. And one of the things that I would urge Americans to think about today is this takes a lot of pre-planning. We were in a regional hospital that did not have an organ procurement program, and we would have never known about this if we had not made arrangements beforehand. So it's something all of us need to think about. It's an extraordinary gift that will give meaning to our lives. And, you know, it also reminds us that no matter how different we are on the outside, no matter what our political beliefs are, our ideologies, that we're all the same inside, and that we can give the gift of life to each other. Along with decertification, we are reforming the Organ Procurement and Transplantation Network, the OPTN, thanks to the leadership of Administrator Engels, who you'll meet in a minute. We also are investing in new ways to encourage organ donation, and Deputy Secretary O'Neill will share more of these initiatives. I want to thank Chairman Jason Smith and Congressman John Joyce for joining us today. Could you both stand? And they have it was their leadership that alerted us, and their hard work that alerted us to this calamity happening in South Florida and other states as well, and their persistence that led us to take this action today. And I also want to thank Chairman Brett Guthrie and Chairman Chuck Grassley, who have also made this a subject of preoccupation of great importance. and the continued efforts of the Energy and Commerce Committee, the Ways and Means Committee, the Senate Finance Committee, and the Senate Health Committee. Our goal is clear. Every American must trust the nation's organ procurement system. We will not stop until that goal is met. I now turn this over to Dr. Oz to discuss the collaborative effort in greater detail.
Thank you. Come stay for 1 second. I want to emphasize something that is vital, because we talk about the gift of life with organ transplantation. It's actually the gift of love. And the things you're going to hear about today, and the reality that these were allowed to unfold and continue in ways that were unimaginable when I took this position, is shocking. And it would not have been addressed without the fortitude, the strength, I think the medical term is cojones, of the Secretary, who is undaunted in his desire to make a difference in saving lives of Americans. President Trump has been 100% supportive of these aggressive actions. As we walk you through this historic day, again, the first time ever in history there's been a mid-cycle decertification of an organ procurement organization, and it will be the first time when it's finished that it will have been completed successfully, we believe, as well, for good reason. But it doesn't happen without strong leadership at the top that gives you air power. So God bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So the Secretary, I don't think he realized it when he did this, but when he started putting in place leadership at different agencies, happened to pick two people with experience in transplantation. So I'm going to go first and speak a bit about what CMS has to do and a little bit about my story in transplantation. Marty McCurry is going to follow me, and both of us have, I believe, a similar experience. When I was a young surgeon finishing my training, I remember being called on organ procurement runs. And these are always in the middle of the night, because that's when you get the OR at the donor hospital, because it's busy during the day. And I remember flying all over the country, in particular one snowy night to Buffalo, where it always seemed to be snowy when we went there. And I witnessed firsthand the love, the passion, weirdly almost the joy that is involved when you're saving a life, even though you're risking your own. And I say risking because these snowy flights, these pilots were not probably signing up for this, but they were going to do whatever it took, even when it was a difficult terrain. When we land there, the ambulance companies, the nurses that were taking care of the deceased individual, their families who had been approached in the middle of their deep grief had been brave enough to make a difficult choice to donate the organs of their loved ones, knowing that there was a greater good that might come from this horrible experience that had taken place in the loss of a person that was so dear to them. Throughout this process, I gained a lot of insight into what actually goes into the organ transplants process, but you don't really feel it at the same level until you're actually doing the transplants, which is what I did as a heart transplant surgeon, and talk to the recipients, people who are barely holding on, trying to avoid falling into the abyss, the darkness of death, knowing that someone's going to have to, in a moment of grief, donate the most precious things we have in the temple of our souls, our organs, to allow them to live to fight another day. I remember, in particular, a case that many of you probably had heard of when, in the middle of the 1996 World Series, the manager of the Yankees, Joe Torre's brother, Frank Torre, who was on our transplant list at Columbia, had an organ become available just before the final game of the World Series, and the organ became available, poetically, in the Bronx, where the Yankees play. And I did the transplant that evening, and by dawn, we knew that he would survive. And that man, Frank Torre, became an extremely close friend, like many of my patients, lived for over 20 years, relatively uneventfully, with that kind donated organ from a young man in the Bronx. Those are the stories that get me and Marty and others so passionately engaged in making sure transplantation works well. That's why we are so deeply committed to fixing the pathology that has infected this process. So let me give you a bit about the scale of these issues and then walk you through what we're going to do. And again, it's an historic day. Some of these numbers I'm hoping will become important enough that you'll remember them and share them with people that care about this issue. We've got 100,000 people awaiting organs right now today in America. While I'm speaking, another person will be added to that list. During this press conference, someone waiting for an organ is going to die. These are big numbers, and it's every single day without notice, that's why we don't want to lose organs because of paperwork issues or incompetence or inefficiencies in the systems that were the nonprofit entities that were given the license to procure these organs. 28,000 organs go unmatched and therefore discarded every year. Loving people, gave their organs or their loved ones' organs to the system, and we don't use them. 28,000 theoretically lives were lost, and there's huge financial cost as well, as you'll hear about later on, when we don't use these organs, because the second-base solution, like dialysis, isn't nearly as good, but incredibly expensive. Every missed donation is an opportunity that we've lost to save a life. And that's why we have decided to take this action. And please see the federal oversight that's coming down the pike, and it's harsh, as tough love, because it's needed to restore trust in the organ transplant system. We're going to crack down on noncompliance with Medicare requirements. That's what CMS is going to offer to this equation. In part, we have the ability to address the suffering that's occurred because of systemic failures that have progressed and lasted far too long. We're going to start enforcing the appropriately rigorous standards and modernize the system with stronger data oversight, innovative tools that are going to make organ procurement easier, more seamless, more effortless, and more effective for all America, especially Americans who are waiting transplantation. So we're taking unique action today that has never been completed before. We're going to terminate the Medicare participation agreement for an organ procurement organization, a so-called OPO. This action follows documented quality concerns that have lasted for a decade. You may be asking yourself, what has taken so long? That's what the leadership of Secretary Kennedy and President Trump offers us. The minimum conditions of participation and coverage for Medicare are not being fulfilled. So we have felt it appropriate to recommend that the Life Alliance Organ Recovery Agency, which serves 6 counties in southern Florida, lose its certification. And that action is going to be taken today within CMS. 10 years of noncompliance was tolerated. This organ procurement and transplantation network that Tom Engels will speak about, entity, has been talking about this for at least that long. They had made requirements in old days, years ago, to decertify this entity. It was never acted on. That group was replaced. And Administrator Engels is going to walk you through what the new group has also said, which is to decertify, which you are acting on. The underperformance as assessed by CMS, my organization has confirmed this. We have lost organs for paperwork reasons. The wrong labeling has sent the wrong organ to the wrong place, all kinds of issues. And as late as August, there was a process that we would hear more thoughts back, and URSA was still unswayed. OPTN, this entity that governs the entire organization, still felt that the program was lacking. For that reason, we are decertifying them today, in part because there's inadequate training, inadequate effort to address the massive understaffing. They only are staffed probably at 2/3 where they should be. We want to ensure that every single American awaiting transplantation has a fair chance and begins to trust the system. Congress has thoughtfully and aggressively pursued some horrifying stories that have chilled some Americans' enthusiasm for donating organs. We are here today to tell you this system is safe. It's rigorously being addressed. There's more actions that will probably be coming. We're going to be tougher than ever before, because if we lose trust in the organ transplantation system of this country, tens of thousands of people are going to die yearly whose lives could be saved. And only by taking this tough action are we going to be able to get the solutions we desire. We are sending a tough message to all the other nonprofit organ procurement agencies, organizations, so they know we're serious. We want them to know there's a new sheriff in town, and we're coming for them if they don't take care of the American people. Now, the passion that you probably hear in my voice is shared because I spend countless nights transplanting hearts into people and lungs into people who otherwise would die. My close friend and colleague and the director of the FDA has also been involved in organ transplantation at Johns Hopkins, and I'd love to ask him to come up and share some of his passion for this area as well as we take you through the specific actions that are taking place today. Marty.
Well, thank you, Dr. Oz. Dr. Oz at one point had done more heart-lung transplants than anybody in the state of New York, and we are so grateful to have his expertise. I want to just point out that we all want the same thing. We all want to see the health and well-being for as many people as possible improve. And I can just tell you from a personal experience that my story is not unique. To get a call in the middle of the night to go out and do a run to retrieve an organ for transplantation, or to be involved in one of the procedures, and then to learn later that another organ was thrown in the red plastic bag of trash in the operating room for no good reason except a breakdown in communication, or a coordination mishap, or an individual who made a bad call, is a tragedy. And the number of 28,000 that you just heard Dr. Oz cite should shock every living human being. We've been complaining about this for a long time in the surgical community. We've been talking about it in the policy of organ transplant community. It's been well known for years. People have been talking about it, but nothing really has changed until now. This is the first time ever that we have seen an action initiated against an organ procurement organization. There's been too much lack of oversight and accountability. Who's responsible for these problems? We have a moral duty as human beings to steward something so sacred as an organ. You know, one of the things you never prepare for in medical school, you're never trained or taught to handle, is breaking bad news, pronouncing someone to be dead, and then having the next conversation about what to do with the body. Never once was I trained on how to do that, except when I had to do it. And what you learn is that there's something intensely sacred about a body after someone has deceased. It's a powerful bonding connection between the body and the loved ones of that individual. And so when somebody agrees to donate an organ, when a family agrees to allow part of that body to be used for medical science for the health of somebody else, we have a moral duty to be good stewards. And so thank you for the actions that are being announced today, and more to come on this critical issue. For too long, we've seen conflicts of interest in the organ allocation system, gaming of the system, inefficiencies, underutilization of some organs, flying over a hospital where an organ is badly needed to go to another hospital a much further distance because that's what somebody deemed appropriate. We have seen a centralization of decision-making, sometimes poor decision-making on organ allocation, that takes that decision-making away from the physician. And so these actions are going to put more decision-making back in the hands of physicians. There have been data concerns. At the FDA, we're going to do everything we can to do our part. We have already taken action to change testing requirements so there doesn't have to be routine tuberculosis testing that takes time and further delays the transplantation of organs into individuals if a physician does not believe it's necessary. If they believe it's necessary, they can get it. But we are removing requirements that they say are slowing down the delivery of organs to donors. We have to listen to them. And so we are all connected and responsive, and we want to be responsive. There have been forced organ donations in other countries on vulnerable populations, and it's wrong. It's evil. It's dark. We don't have jurisdiction over what happens in other countries, but we have had complaints that other tissue products from individuals that may have been involved in forced organ transplantation against their will, maybe showing up in U.S. markets, including bone grafts or other tissue derivatives. Well, we are looking into those concerns, and if we find out that any of that is in fact happening, we will shut it down and use the full extent of the law to punish that sort of activity. You know, organ transplantation, when it happens, is beautiful to watch. When it works well, when you see somebody wake up from the procedure, it's one of the most miraculous and gorgeous things you can possibly see. Even as a burned out resident in the hospital, it will make you pause and just think broadly about the common good of humanity and the might of modern medicine. But when it goes wrong because of human error, it is something that is very offensive. We're hoping to rebuild public trust in so much of what we're doing. And so addressing this issue will, in my opinion, help us get to a path where we can rebuild the public trust that's necessary to increase organ donations, the number of people who designate themselves as organ donors. So I hope that is the ultimate goal from all of these important reforms that are being announced today. So thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Dr. Oz. And I want to introduce Tom Engels, who leads HRSA and is doing, gosh, what people have just talked about doing for a long time. He's done in the 6 months that he's been in office, and it's exciting. So thank you, Dr. Engels.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm probably the least known speaker of everybody that's been on the stage so far, but I'm Tom Engels, and I'm the administrator of the Health Resources and Services Administration. And I want to thank Secretary Kennedy and President Trump for their outstanding leadership on this and showing true action when action was really needed. I also want to thank my HRSA staff, Suma, Dr. Lynch, my Chief of Staff, Margaret Bush, Deputy Chief of Staff, Holly Walla, and the entire HRSA team. They have put tireless efforts into this, and they have been the real leaders in this, and they are the real heroes that I really want to acknowledge and thank. At the Health Resources and Services Administration, we know that when families make that difficult decision to say yes to a donation, they are entrusting us and the national organ system with their loved one's legacy. When safety lapses occur, trust is broken. And if families lose trust, fewer will choose donation. That is simply unacceptable, and we are here to fix it. Under Secretary Kennedy's leadership, the Organ Procurement Transplantation Network modernization efforts are strengthening patient safety and restoring trust. Over the last 8 months, HRSA has led historic modernization of the Organ Procurement and Transplantation Network, transforming governance, transparency, technology, and accountability across the transplant system. First, governance and accountability. For the first time in 40 years, HRSA separated the OPTN board from its contractor and seated an independent 34-member board through a national special election with 83% voter participation, showing strong community engagement. Second, transparency and fairness. HRSA launched a public dashboard to improve transparency and increase oversight when organ allocation deviates from OPTN policy. This is called allocation out of sequence, which means patients were skipped over for their chance for a life-saving transplant. Third, policy reforms focused on safety. To strengthen both patient safety and fairness, HRSA directed the OPTN to review and change multiple key policy concerns, including the unfair allocation out of sequence procurement safety through clear policy directives. Fourth, modernizing the finances. We moved away from the model where one single contractor monopolized the system for 40 years and into a new multi-vendor environment which is best-in-class contractors. And Congress, and thank you to the members of Congress that did this, thank you for the fee changes that you made. This change is going to help HRSA bring greater transparency and oversight in how patient registration fees support the OPTN operations. Fifth, a new complaint reporting process and better data to improve patient safety. HRSA opened a direct reporting channel for misconduct and safety concerns, giving us full visibility into patient safety complaints across the system. Through this new reporting system, complaints can be reported anonymously and will allow investigations, appropriate actions to be taken. But our work does not stop there. Today, Secretary Kennedy is directing a new initiative to improve patient safety and further restore integrity to the nationwide transplant system. This new directive authorizes the OPTN Board of Directors to designate a full-time patient safety officer. This officer will be responsible for coordinating responses across clinical operational teams, ensure compliance with federal priorities, and take corrective action whenever patients are at risk. This builds on our previous directives to the OPTN requiring national reporting and safety-related concerns and stronger safeguards in organ procurement. Families and clinicians deserve a system that is trustworthy and accountable. They all deserve this. When disturbing practices came to light, Secretary Kennedy and HRSA acted, directing corrective actions, enhanced monitoring, and national reporting to restore integrity and accountability. Patients and families must know the system is fair and worthy of their trust. This is the standard we are setting today. This is the promise that Secretary Kennedy and President Trump are delivering today. And with that, I would like to turn it over to another leader in this entire area, is the Deputy Secretary of the Department of Health Services, Deputy Secretary Jim Leo.
What is sacred? The personal can be sacred, the eternal can be sacred, compassion can be sacred, sacrifice can be sacred. And saving the life of another by giving of yourself unites these dimensions of the sacred into one line that only points to the future. But fear can stand in the way. Living donors, even in their generosity, fear that saving another life could damage their own. And families, gathered around a hospital bed, fear that discordant incentives by procurement organizations could disrupt life-saving care for their loved one. Donating an organ is an act of great compassion, but every episode of abuse in the procurement system can frighten potential donors away. That's why today is so important. Over the past 4 years, all of us watched the public health establishment burn its public trust. All of us watched the abuses of the pandemic in dismay. But Secretary Kennedy had the solution: earn back public trust, brick by brick and stone by stone, until we rebuild the House through transparency and rigorous science. What you just heard from Secretary Kennedy and Mehmet and Marty and Tom is another story in rebuilding this House. Nearly 100,000 Americans are currently waiting for a kidney, but only 45,000 receive transplants every year. I've watched friends die waiting on the list, and I will never get over it. We have a system for handling kidney failure from transplantation to dialysis, but it obviously has limits. One limit is a compromised immune system. Cadaver kidneys typically last 10 to 15 years and require immunosuppressive drugs that present significant health challenges. By closing one wound, we open another. Dialysis, too, takes a significant toll on the body and the mind. The process can be debilitating and exhausting. Patients are tethered to a machine, and their life revolves around the machine. That is one way to live, but we can build a better one. A single kidney transplant saves Medicare more than $500,000 in dialysis. I want to talk today about 4 concrete ways the Trump administration is safely increasing the availability of kidneys for Americans in need. First, I'm pleased to announce significant investment to make living donations easier and more affordable by improving the Living Donor Program. Today, we're committing $25 million in new funding to that task. HRSA's Living Organ Donation Reimbursement Program will reduce the financial burden on living organ donors by reimbursing eligible expenses that are non-medical, such as lost wages, travel and lodging, meals, and dependent care. I started pushing this project in 2007, the last time I was at HHS, and now that I'm back, it's a true honor to announce it. Second, we're developing methods to support living kidney donation through the KidneyX Innovation Accelerator. Third, we recently broke new ground by greenlighting the first clinical trials for xenotransplantation at FDA. Soon, doctors will save patients with kidney failure by giving them genetically modified pig organs. Someday, we'll replace failing organs with biomechanical improvements. Fourth, through our investment arm, ARPA-H, we're developing bioprinting technology and regenerative medicine to 3D print personalized organs on demand that will not require immunosuppressive drugs. These four efforts complement our broader initiatives to enhance patient safety through the organ donation and transplantation system and bring us into a future in which waiting for a transplant will become a bizarre relic of the past. In the meantime, my colleagues and I are committed to reforming the transplant system to save and improve the lives of Americans. Previous administrations have had concerns about the OPO, but Secretary Kennedy is the first to decertify mid-cycle. Yesterday was Patient Safety Day. Today we live in the future. Thank you.
So there's a process by which the Miami South Florida organization can appeal the decertification. That process will take several months. They will appeal it to the Secretary of Health and Human Services. And we believe that over the next few months, they'll get a very fair hearing. If they end up failing, then there's a process to open it up to other OPO groups or new ones to enter into that region. There will be coverage. There will be seamless coverage for patients in the area. And I want to applaud the OPOs that are doing a great job, because most are. They're spectacularly effective at that tense moment of dealing with the doctor, the nurses, the family, the estranged sibling, all the things that happen at the moment of death that is sacred, as Jim O'Neill spoke to. And we want those OPOs to be celebrated. The reason we're taking aggressive action against failing OPOs is to make sure that the strong ones continue to thrive.
Thank you. Mary Margaret with Daily Wire. I was hoping you could expand a little more on some of these steps you've taken to make sure that we're not harvesting organs from living patients like so many people are concerned about.
Well, our team has done an extensive investigation in all this, and the OPTN, when they made this recommendation, this was not an easy recommendation for them to make. But now we are seeing and have done investigations in other areas. We have put corrective action in place. The OPTN board is following those corrective action plans, and they're making sure that those OPOs that are operating in those areas are going to be compliant in those areas.
Any other questions? Hi, I'm Lauren Brensel with Politico. Can you talk a little bit more about 3D printing personalized organs on demand and how that will impact patients?
Yeah, so ARPA-H is one of our investment arms. It was created by Congress a few years ago to make non-dilutive investments in innovative technologies that will improve health. And we're using that to deploy money to figure out ways to make artificial organs that will be a better solution than donations.
Hi, Peter Wariski, Washington Post. There have been a number of allegations against some of the OPOs for double billing and other fraudulent ways of defrauding Medicare. Is there any effort to bring DOJ or any law enforcement into some of these cases?
We're aware of the allegations. Just to get everyone on the same page, OPOs are paid for the costs. They're nonprofits. They're paid for the costs incurred when they procure organs. We do have OPOs held accountable to the standards of the other OPOs. So we are investigating very seriously anything that could hurt the trust in the organ procurement system. I don't believe billing is our biggest concern, and just from what we've been seeing, but we are definitely investigating it.
Thank you, everyone.
If I could ask Dr. Lynch and Suma come up, and members of Congress, Jason, John, coming up, just get a foot. The hard work of Dr. Lynch and Suma should be acknowledged. Jim mentioned them, but they have really been leaders in the field with Tom Engels. Thank you.